What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes, and today what we're going to talk about is how to utilize your empathy for your own benefit. So we're going to talk about actually the positive qualities and the positive things that come from having empathy. I'm here with Bridget Nielsen, my girlfriend, as you all know, and we are here in Tucson, Arizona on a little vacation, and we just couldn't stay away from the camera. We had to go ahead and make a video even though we're on vacation. So this is a vacation video. So yeah, the reason why I want to do this video with Bridget is because Bridget has a really amazing quality to her where she's able to harmonize with people's fields really easily and kind of like extract the blessings out of them. So this is one of the things you can do when you have empathy. You can harmonize with different people, and if they have a quality that you really like about them, an attribute, say virtue of some sort, and you want to kind of download that for yourself so that you can, spread more of this positive virtue around. There's certain techniques for how to do that. So we want to talk a little bit about what those techniques are, and then we're just going to kind of dig into the idea of empathy and what that means and different ways of using it and looking at it. So why don't you share with us some of the techniques that you use to be able to harmonize with those different positive attributes of people and bring them into your field.
Awesome. Well, it was fun for him to tell me this because I didn't really know that I do it. So it was nice to get that observation, and now I had to figure out how to reverse engineer it to explain it. Mm-hmm. But thank you for that. So, the first thing that I came up with was the idea of really clearly identifying what you want, like who you are, like what your energy is or where you want to go with it, who you want to be, because otherwise you're in the defense of just being kind of like overwhelmed by a bunch of energy coming at you, but you can't play with it or learn from it or understand it if you don't know where you want to be. So it's kind of like being on the offense of life rather than the defense. So getting really clear about who you want to be and your own energy and where you want to go with that, so that then you can begin to discern and identify within other people's energy fields or within different currents of understanding what you want to utilize from that.
Okay, cool. So it's like you want to be aware of what you're looking for, because otherwise you could just basically be downloading stuff you don't want. Like anything could come into the field.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that a lot of empaths have issues with, right? It's like they go out into public and then they're feeling all these things from all these different people because they don't have that clear discernment of like, okay, this is something that I want to harmonize with, and this is something I don't want to harmonize with. Yeah. And I've talked about this in my video, the importance of being able to strengthen your energy field.
Yes.
So that you have the power to say, like, this is the vibration that I want to choose here, and I'm not going to let just any, random garbage float by into my field and start harmonizing with that, because that's going to take me to a place I don't want to go to.
Totally. And that's like critical step one, right? Is to get out of the overwhelm and into building your own field, and then clarifying what you want to build your own field into, like, and who you want to be. And then from there, in my next step of reverse engineering, I was like, okay, well, most of the time in that space, you're absorbing 100% of the person's energy, and it's just like, and it's just this whole jumbled, scattered mess of just a lot. It doesn't matter if it's good, beneficial, or not beneficial, it's just a lot, period. And so once you build that field out a bit, like you're saying, and then you clarify, then you can get to the empowered space of discerning within that 100% of that person's energy or that bandwidth. It could be just even connecting in with extraterrestrial consciousness. That's a bandwidth we're connecting with. And if you just connect in with it, it's a lot. There's a lot there, but beginning to discern would be the next key, and be able to go, okay, that's 60%, I'm not really interested in that. But that particular characteristic or that particular energy is interesting, and then going deep into that energy.
Okay, cool. So I kind of see it like you're downloading the blessings that you choose to download. This is interesting because this reminds me of a practice by Rudolf Steiner, where he talks about how when you're able to harmonize with a positive attribute in someone else and really appreciate that attribute, that you start actually absorbing that into yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's through the act of appreciation that you're actually able to invite that into your energy field. So this says something interesting about envy or jealousy, right? So if somebody has an attribute that you really actually like that attribute or potentially even want that attribute, But if you're not appreciating it, and you're not appreciating them for having that attribute, then you're not opening yourself up to have it yourself. And in a sense, you might actually even be blocking yourself from it.
Yeah.
So how important do you think it is to be grateful or appreciative of the particular aspects in that person that you're feeling like you want to learn from them? This is essentially like what it is. It's like you're learning from people, right?
Yeah.
So this is like a form of energetic learning.
Yeah.
Whereas, you could think of learning and teaching a lot in like the spoken sense, where people articulate to you what they're doing, and then you basically take what you're told and then you turn that into action steps that can mimic what the person explained to you. But this is on an energetic level. This is like osmotically, like taking it from someone's energy field. So you're harmonizing with them on an energetic space, and you're learning energetically. So how important do you think it is to appreciate other people, and how do you do that when you're actually going through this process?
Yeah, I think it's really key, and you hit the nail on the head with this, because it's the energy of, well, the thing that you're saying in that space of gratitude or appreciation is that then you're synchronizing and you're agreeing with that, with the transmission able to flow.
Right, because there's no resistance.
There's
right?
no resistance.
Yeah.
And I feel like the envy and jealousy
There's
is like
resistance.
an inversion. It's
Right.
an inversion. Like you're actually really wanting to have rapport. And we're just talking energy field. They might not ever be aware. It could be like some teacher in a different country. They don't even know that you're like tapping in or something. But like the appreciation creates the energetic bridge, and so that then you can resonate at it. And the thing is if you're able to be aware of that frequency or of that transmission, whatever it is, in that other person, that means that you have the capacity to be able to take it into yourself.
Like you have it yourself.
You have it
like
yourself.
the blueprint there.
Yes.
Right.
And the jealousy and envy is some kind of distortion of you not believing that you do, and so then
it's resistance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that resistance is going to block it from coming in.
Yeah.
But appreciation is an openness. When you're appreciating someone or something, you're very open to that thing and to that energy. So when you're appreciating people, and I would even go a step further and saying celebrating it, right?
Yeah.
When you're celebrating other people, especially their positive attributes, in a sense, you're opening yourself up to those positive attributes, and then they can move into your energy field, and you can learn how to harmonize with them and then start expressing them, whether that person's there or not.
Totally. And there's something about like, that's one of the things that I do is I like hyper focus on people's kind of like, I can feel their soul like essence, and then I like focus on that, so that these positive attributes, and sometimes that can be to the detriment, because then you're not aware of the other energies or like where they're currently at and stuff like that. But I still feel like it's like going to the depth of that person or that energy to understand its like core essence.
Right.
And then you're understanding the root of it, and then from that space of like the root energetics, then you can understand how that manifests. And that's a really important translation into the physical, because when I'm like doing this, whether it's to understand angels or to understand a business idea, like it can go for any of it, that translation back into material life, like, and so then like you're synchronizing with like, well, what would that be like? What is it like to walk in that person's shoes or that energy? And so then it's like, well, what would that person do? How would that person act? And then you can understand, and that could be just an actual like feeling of that. But then for me, I hyper observe how people are actually doing it. So I'm like, I can feel the energy, and they're taking this step, and this step. So it's actually extremely practical at the same time too.
Okay, so it's looking at it from both levels, both energetically, but then also practically, like what would they do?
Definitely.
And this is totally like when you think about, I bet anybody could imagine how their parents might respond to a particular thing. So that you could, in a sense, to a somewhat accurate degree, have in your head a conversation with somebody you know really well, and you could basically answer the questions that you would be asking them for them inside your own head.
Totally.
And it would line up. So I've heard of this technique used where people will say, okay, my counsel is like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and like all these, really profound, amazing people. And when they have a issue that they're going through in their life, they ask themselves, well, if I was, sitting at a council table with these people and I was asking them what to do, they could anticipate how this person would respond because they feel like they have enough of a resonant understanding of where this person's at. And this being an extremely powerful tool to get, in a sense, like outside advice without going outside of you. So this is something, to a certain degree, everybody has the capacity to do and has done, because everybody's had conversations with people inside their head and anticipated them to, a more or less accurate degree. But, as you know the person better, it's more of an accurate interpretation.
Definitely.
So is that something you've ever done?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm kind of doing that constantly. I mean, it's more like it's a level of my introversion. It's like what I do in my introverted time, that instead of kind of like seeking counsel in them, like I'm just understanding it, and then I'm like ready to execute. It like fills up in me, and then it's like, oh, okay, now I'm ready to like exude it and express this, and now it's an integrated part of me. So I let it, it's kind of it's a strange nuanced thing, and he always does such a good job of making me be able to explain it and understand like what's happening underneath it, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing, is that because there's almost like two levels of learning, right? There's the kind of learning that a child learns from emulating the people that it looks up to, and that kind of learning is unarticulated.
Yeah.
It's something that it's essence learning, like what we're talking about, right? But then the next level of learning is understanding what you're doing in that essence place, and then being able to describe that and then articulate it, which is a whole different level of understanding. So you can look at like even psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is a relatively new science, but this is the articulation of what's going on emotionally and psychosomatically in people and in groups of people, right? So underneath that, there's an energetic understanding where somebody that's just grown up with somebody that's more or less balanced or secure and stable in themselves, they learn how to be balanced and stable, and then they develop thinking patterns and habits that are balanced and stable, but they don't necessarily know what they're doing. They don't have a thought out formula for how they interpret their reality and what they do inside their mind. And I've always found this really interesting, because I'll talk to certain people that they just pick up something psychically from their parents as a kid, and they develop certain thought patterns, but then all describe how certain people will interpret things to them in a positive way, and they'll be like, wow, I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. So you can think of it as two layers. There's kind of like the psychic subliminal layer of learning, and then there's the articulated layer of learning. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about moving into the psychic layer of learning, the subliminal layer of learning, but doing it consciously as opposed to doing it subconsciously, which brings way more power to it, because then you can actually have systems or techniques that you apply to this subliminal learning that accelerate your capacity to learn subliminally, and then can skyrocket your growth as a result.
Totally. And in those moments, if you're consciously aware of how to do it in those like challenging situations, then you can apply the tool. But if, like you say, you keep it kind of like unconscious and energetic, you can't just like apply the tool pretty instantaneously. Like I'm wanting to do, like we've talked about, more videos and stuff on starseeds, but I'm not connected to that bandwidth right now, because I'm focused on so many other things and a lot of different esoteric teachings. So it's like, but we consciously know that by taking in certain energy or media or focusing on it, that it will start to come in. But that's like I'm consciously engaging and bringing that back into my life, versus just like, I don't know, it's just
letting
not
it
happening.
Flow, right?
Yeah.
And the conscious thing is really important, especially if you're having issues being an empath and being overwhelmed by a bunch of different energies. It's really interesting when I think about like empathy, like we say over empathy, and then and you could think of it in polarities. It'd be like over empathy, and then it'd be like sociopathy, or even like being a psychopath or psychopathy, where a psychopath doesn't feel anyone's emotions, and actually they couldn't even if they tried, and that's like one of the attributes of being a psychopath. You can't feel people, and it's a strange like disability in a sense. And you can say over empathic people can't help but feel everybody in their field, and that's overwhelming, so that they maybe sometimes don't even know what their own thoughts are, or don't even know what their own feelings are. So, but then when you look at spiritual development, you see a lot of people becoming spiritually developed in a lot of senses is being able to fully stand in your own field and not be interrupted by anyone, but also at the same time have the capacity to fully empathize with people, but then direct your empathy. So this is what you're talking about, right? You feel into their field, and then you kind of target those aspects of them that you want to focus on. And you mentioned something about focusing on like like their true truth or their deeper essence or something?
Like core essence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you are, well, one thing that you're doing is you're actually bringing out the positive attributes of that person.
Yeah.
Because when you focus on those positive attributes, you're in a sense giving permission for those positive attributes to step forward.
Yes.
But then you're also downloading their field at the same time.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit more about about some techniques for actually doing that people could walk away with and be like, okay, I feel like I have a general framework for being able to walk into a room with somebody that I respect, that maybe I notice there's some attributes that like are not the best and some that are the best, but I really respect those attributes. How do I walk into that room and harmonize with their positive aspects without getting wrapped up in their negative aspects?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, the first thing is to not be scared. You know, because I think the reason why you don't go in and then you don't go in to like them or whatever is because you're scared of what you're gonna find.
Right.
You know, but like at the end, at the bottom of like everyone's core essence is beauty, like is divinity. And like that is their true nature. That's the truest nature of them. The other stuff is just kind of like garbage and trash on top. And so like the garbage and trash on top doesn't have to be super scary.
Right.
You know, and so in that space, it literally is like, I like that we're bringing this like to such a conscious level, because it's like walking in and being like, okay, I might feel other crap, but that's okay, because I'm going like spelunking.
But you're not afraid of it.
I'm not afraid of the other stuff, because I'm looking for like the gold, like I'm looking for the core essence. And when you're focused on that, that's what you'll create, and then you'll actually like get that. And so it's letting go of that, and part of that modulation, as I'm like, you know, kind of psychoanalyzing myself right here, is I had to turn on and turn off, like I'm super empathic and sensitive, and I had to turn on and turn off certain things like in childhood, you know, to be like, wow, the mountains and energy of Utah is so amazing. Turn on that juice, like juice that up. And then it's like, wow, these other people judging me. It's like, I need to turn down that volume. And so literally like in my field, I had to like be able to turn things up and turn things down to create regulation, like a balance in my own field, which was the psychic download that you were kind of saying I got from my family. But I'm like, how do I do that within my own energetic system? And other people just put up walls and boundaries and turn off the empathy. But I've like been able to like turn on buttons, turn off buttons to regulate the energy. That's another method.
I really like that. So you know what that makes me think of is that so I feel like why a lot of people freak out that are highly empathic is because they have like a reflex or a fear response to the muckier energies.
Yeah.
You know, which I've found personally in the work, you know, I work with a lot of people that have, are recovering addicts.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of dark, murky energy in their fields. But the reason why I'm able to work with them and not get creeped out by it is because I've worked through that energy myself.
Yes.
So what I've found is that the scariest kinds of murky energies are the kinds that I completely don't understand and have never looked at, because then it's like, because there's no face to it, you're like, it could be anything, and it's really scary.
Well said.
So I think that this brings in this idea of doing enough personal work, or at least, you know, and if there are energies that are murky, that are scary to you, then this might be an area for you to explore within, you know, a controlled environment to a certain degree, where you can then be like, okay, I know what this energy is. I'm not afraid of it because I know how to transmute it. And in fact, I've done my shadow work, so I've, to a certain degree, transmuted in myself so that it doesn't create a fear response anymore. And then from that space, you're able to be in fields of people that have negative attributes in their field, their negative vibes. But you don't freak out or try to put a wall up to the negative vibes. You can just basically be cool with it because you know how to transmute that energy, and then focus on their positive vibes without being drawn to their negative vibes.
That's such a good one. That's so key. I really like that.
Well, because people naturally start looking for threats. When there's anything threatening, all of your attention will go to that. You're walking down the street and a car comes screeching towards you.
Yeah.
You know, that's a threat. You're going to forget the conversation and you're going to look at that car because that's a threat. So if you don't know what this low vibe is and it's still a potential threat in your mind, you're not going to be able to focus on anything but that low vibe.
Well, and in that moment you can scan, because I think like it's like threat is universal, where it's like it's just a threat, but it's like in that moment of like threat, then it's like what kind of a threat, and then to discern and be like, is this like crazy something that I've never handled before and this is dangerous, or is this like oh, this is just kind of like that mean kid at school in elementary school, and it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
So it's kind of like auto scan of threat, and then be like, this actually isn't a big deal. I'm in a safe situation. I'm not going to get taken over and overwhelmed energetically or physically. And then it's like, move it aside. All right, now going in for the gold.
I like that.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and hit the like button if you like this video. Hit the bell button if you want to be notified every time I release a video. And leave a comment below if this was helpful for you, or if you experience issues being over empathic, or maybe you're under empathic. But just kind of share your experience with this video and what you thought of it. And if there's anything more that you want us to cover on this topic, go ahead and put that down in the comments also. And we'd be stoked to make another video on this topic for you.
Definitely.
So like I said, thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll talk to you next time.